Welcome back to A Game of Fangs and Threads. My name's Hannah. I write books and occasionally I read them too. My first two books, A Little Piece of Magic from Witches and Wolves, are my witchy werewolf paranormal adventure story with a lot more supernatural elements thrown in. And my third book, Rise of the Riders, which is the first in a planned dragon trilogy, comes out today. So that's what this video is about. I can't put it there. I'm sorry about the light. We're just gonna have to live with it. Yes, this is my young adult debut, let's say. It's definitely my young adult self-published debut. Following Aurora, who is an elf, a human raised by enemy elves. I'm going to read the back, and then I'm going to read the first chapter, just to whet your appetite, to get you interested for the book. As I've said, it is available today. It releases today and will be available on Kindle Unlimited, and in the glorious paperback that I have in my hands. It's so pretty. Big shout out to my friend Jordan, who did the cover and has agreed to do the covers for the next two in the series as well. So let's read the back, shall we? Break conscription before conscription breaks you. Aurora rose as a human orphan raised by enemy elves who want nothing more than to free the dragons of the Empire from a cruel conscription the human army have placed them under in order to make them fight, and it binds them in more ways than one. Okay, so just before we get into this, I do have a content warning, a trigger warning. Please note that Rise of the Riders is suitable for teens, but deals with topics such as death, prejudice, and war. There are mentions of magical torture, death, off-page rape / coercion is mentioned but not depicted, and slight possessive vibes from love interest. The dedication is to distractions and dragons. So, chapter 1. The woods were quiet as I drew my arm back. I wasn't sure if it was because of my impressive talent, or because this particular batch of arrows had been fletched with sound-dampening owl feathers. The arrow flew straight, missing my initial target of a plumper bird, and landed in a tree with a soft thump. The bird took to the sky in an explosion of noise and feathers, the rest of the flock heading skywards. I followed their movement with a knocked arrow, but decided against it. The birds had gained too much height for me to accurately hit or track their descent if I did hit something. I slid the still-strung bow over my head to join the arrow-filled quiver on my shoulder, and pulled my hood over my hair, hiding my human ears. Cor, my adopted father figure, was just ahead of me, his dark hair blending into the gloom of the trees perfectly, and when he turned back, I quickly read his signed message. He was waiting for me, his fingers twitching in impatience, but otherwise holding himself perfectly still and silent. The expert hunter needed me to hurry up if we were going to get to the herd before they moved on. The elves were built in a particular way that meant they did not make tracks or even a sound unless they wanted to, and it left me scrambling in the dirt every time. I had no way of keeping up with them. When they did that, my humanity became a hindrance that impacted my elvish companions. The safety of this herd rested solely on a buck, an impressive creature with large antlers that could be deadly. Bringing down the buck would feed us for a lot longer than the does we usually hunted, but that would leave this herd unprotected. I had always been told that it was important to retain the balance of nature, only taking what we needed and nothing that could cause permanent damage to the delicate web we lived in. Cor had spotted a smaller female just outside of the main group and was signing as I reached his hiding place. The young-looking doe looked like she was in good condition, but she limped awkwardly as she grazed. Her right foreleg looked swollen, and even from this distance I could see it was infected. This would be a mercy killing as much as it was needed to feed us. Sighing softly, I aimed the bow, pulled back on the string, and let the arrow fly. At the last minute she moved, so instead of hitting her cleanly in the ribs, the arrow struck her in the belly. Before the animal hit the ground, the rest of the deer had bolted, eyes wide and scenting the pain on the air. I crept closer to the fallen deer. It was not the clean death I wanted to give her, belly bleeding heavily and foam bubbling in her mouth. At my approach, she struggled weakly to run away, but her wounds bled out messily. Cor was by my side, offering support if I needed it. The animal didn't have long left. Each breath was shallower and more laboured than the one before. I laid my hand on her sweaty neck and with the other slowly drew the knife from my belt. The deer knew the end was coming, and as the final breath left her lungs, her eyes seemed peaceful. Cor tapped my shoulder and signed that I did well. Nothing but kindness in his eyes. I shrugged and inspected the deer. We wouldn't use the leg anyway, but it looked like the animal had just cracked a hoof, allowing an infection to set in. With Cor's help, I was able to prepare the deer for transport and food. The infected leg was removed and left for the wolves, as well as the inedible parts buried. Some things were universal regardless of species. Cor quickly signed, "I'm proud of you, daughter," as we headed back into the camp with a distinct spring in his step. Elves were at home in the woods, but Cor more so. His ability to speak had been taken brutally from him, and his ability to hear had almost been taken in the same fight. And rather than being bitter about it, he had taken it as a gift. If anybody needed a shoulder to cry on, it was Cor who was that shoulder. Every hunter in our group owed their expertise to Cor and his unending patience. Being unable to speak had only increased Cor's incredible ability to understand. He could read lips better than anyone I knew. Some of the elders would tell everyone that Cor could hear a fish breathe, and he always knew where the animals were. And what he lacked in hearing, he had made up for in sight. Cor watched everything. Growing up, I could never hide anything from him. He could always see the lies on my face. Cor was trying to teach me how to be as silent as him, but was an elvish skill I wasn't able to learn. He would wince every time I stepped beside him. No matter how lightly I stepped, it was never lightly enough for him. Even now, as we walked back to the main camp, there was a sadness in Cor's eyes. Cor didn't speak, but that didn't mean he was silent. Once you knew how to read him, Cor spoke volumes. After being submerged in Cor's silent world, it took me a few moments to adjust to the noise of the camp, shaking off the assault on my senses the same way I forgot the sadness of the deer's death at my hand. The messy, painful deaths always lingered in my mind. Luckily, I didn't have that many. Cor tapped me on the shoulder and I jumped. I gave him the bow and quiver to put away, the knives I always kept with me. The camp was peaceful, but the outside world was not kind to the elves. Everyone had a role, and even the smallest job was integral to the smooth running of the camp. I dragged the deer carcass over to the cooking tent. It was easily the biggest tent in camp and one of the better kept ones. Most of our tents were shabby and frayed, but they kept the bad weather out and blended into the surrounding greenery. The cooks helped me to place the carcass on the bench in the middle of the tent. You could smell the rest of the stew bubbling away in the corner. My stomach growled loudly, reminding me that I hadn't had anything to eat since dawn, and that had been hours ago. I ignored the smells in my growling stomach long enough to take advantage of the bucket in the corner. I quickly rinsed off the worst of the dry blood from my hand, just as my stomach started growling again. Someone took pity on me and tossed a round flatbread at me. It was still warm and perfectly flaky. I had just taken a grateful bite when a mess of hair and limbs slid into the tent, nearly launching me into the side of the heavy bench. "Bryn, will you watch what you are doing?" one of the elves shouted. Despite her irritation, she was still musical. The words were almost sung. I could speak Elvish, but my human vocal cords couldn't always hit the right pitch, and often I sounded like I was in pain. A lot of the time I relied on Cor's silent language of signs. The mess of hair straightened up and brushed himself down. Bryn was always smiling, and no one could ever stay mad at him for long. He should be fletching arrows, but he had an inability to sit still that had the elders shaking their heads. No one talked about it openly, but Bryn had been orphaned when he was a baby, and the elders suspected that the upheaval so early in his life had affected his development. That theory had been disproved when I grew up silent and still, despite facing the same upheaval. Did the hunt go well? Did my arrows work? He bounced on his heels and sprayed me with breadcrumbs. Yes, and yes. Although one was a little crooked, I teased, leading him away from the sharp objects in the kitchen tent, to a grateful sigh that travelled all around the chefs like the breath of wind before a storm whipped up. He shot me a look that managed to mix disapproval with his own indistinguishable love of life. He followed me around most places in the camp, bouncing around like a baby animal finding its feet for the first time, shooting me longing looks when he didn't think I could see him. Kyra was waiting for us in front of the tent that she and Cor shared. She was the perfect match for the silent Cor, nursing him back to health after the accident that cost him his voice and hearing. The signed language we used was her invention. She had perfected it, being able to convey what she wanted with a look or a gesture. Bryn and I got closer to see Kyra standing there with one hand on her hip and the other outstretched. Bryn shifted his weight from one foot to the other before passing over some berries. And Kyra clucked her tongue fondly. Everyone knew about Bryn's love of sweets. And she then turned to me, those grey eyes assessing for even the smallest sign of hurt. Praying my own forage had survived the hunt, I undid the pouch tied at my belt. Inside were some roots and seeds that Kyra used daily for her remedies, and some rare and powerful dragonberries. They were purple in colour and about the same size and sweetness as a strawberry. But not even Bryn would eat one of those whole. Each dragonberry had the ability to knock a fully grown man out for hours. Only dragons weren't affected, and Silverfang had a fondness for them. Kyra smiled and placed the pouch gently inside her tent. I could see Cor's hunting gear hanging from the ceiling. I couldn't see Cor, but knew he wouldn't be far. Once he was home, he didn't like to move unless he had to. Thank you, Aurora. Are you joining us by the fire tonight? She signed deftly. I want to hear the story of the lights. You promised you would tell it. I signed back, excitement making me a little less precise. The creation myth of my people is a sacred tale, one we don't give out to just anyone. Aymer's voice was low and faintly amused, echoing in my brain as if I had thought the words. Kyra is one of the only mortals I have ever given the story to. I turned and fought the urge to bow my head. Aymer was massive and majestic. He was easily the biggest and scariest dragon I had seen, with scales the colour of smoke, and eyes the piercing blue of fresh ice. Each of his 4 legs could be mistaken for small hills. One single curving talon was the length of my forearm. His mouth was so gaping that I could walk into his throat and he would swallow me whole. His teeth so large and perfectly spaced he could use me as a toothpick. Aymer's wings reminded me of a bat, just larger and scaled where a bat would have fur. They looked thin, and the late afternoon light highlighted the thin, spidery veins feeding the massive structure. I still had no idea how such a fragile-looking wing could lift and hold such a powerful and heavy-looking beast. Aymer was night incarnate, but had never given me reason to fear him. I still made a point of avoiding his feet, and no one went near him when he was eating. Yes, but it is the story of how I got my name, I explained verbally and with my hands. As much as I wish I could hear that, Cor and I must patrol. Cor seemed to appear out of nowhere, carrying a thick leather saddle that only he was able to attach to Aymer. The dragon was very particular about how the leather sat on him, otherwise it would cause his scales to itch. Silverfang had the same complaint when I mentioned getting one made up for her. Aymer stood patiently whilst Cor scrambled around him. The saddle was a strange contraption of a small padded seat and a lot of straps. There were long, thick ones that went around Aymer's chest and belly. There was one I'd never been able to figure out. Cor never seemed to use it. It was long and thin. I wondered if it was used to control Aymer somehow. As Cor mounted Aymer, we all stepped back so the dragon would have room to take off. It wasn't fun getting buffeted by the wind those giant wings caused. Even the babies could do some damage. More than once, Bryn had gotten caught by a tooth or a claw and had to be rescued. Just before Aymer spread his wings, Cor secured himself to the saddle with a thick band across his torso and a strap for each leg. Aymer took a few cautious steps forward and back, testing the saddle's fit, and Cor did the same. They had been bound together so long that they didn't need words to understand each other. Only once both were satisfied did Aymer take off. Those powerful wings beat up and down, creating a breeze that lifted all the ground up dirt around us. Slowly, almost unbelievably, the dragon and rider started to rise off the ground. Yes, and so, as mentioned at the beginning of this video, if you've sat through that, thank you. I know I'm not very good at narrating my own books, but thank you for watching. Rise of the Riders and A Little Piece of Magic from Witches and Wolves are available from Amazon as of now. The links will be down below in the description. And I guess that's it for this video. So give it a like if you liked it, and hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in whatever comes next. Bye!